Good morning on this Sunday morning, beautiful day the Lord's given us, another time to come together and to study, and glad everybody is here. We'll begin a word of prayer this morning. Olin, would you lead some prayer? Well, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that a few days ago the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that we will no longer have a federal constitutional right to abortion. And you also know that that decision has issued a firestorm within the nation. You have those that are protesting, and some of them have used violence to do this with, and outrage, and they've given it to the states to determine as to what they want to do. And so unless you don't know what's going on in the world, that's what's happening in our nation. I thought we'd talk about that some this morning, about what the Bible has to say about such and some other views of it. But here's some quotes that have come about, and these are just a few of the hundreds, if not thousands. Here's what President Biden said. It's a sad day for the court and country. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. A tragic era of the Supreme Court, in my view. That's his quote. Nancy Pelosi said, no point in saying good morning because it certainly is not one. Barack Obama said, the Supreme Court not only reversed a 50-year precedent, but regulated the most intensely personal decision the person can make to the whims of politicians and ideologues, attacking the essential freedom of millions of Americans. Another man, I don't know who he is, Jonathan Van Ness. He said, this is Trump forcing pregnancy on people. This is about controlling bodies and forcing people into systematic poverty. And then a lot of Hollywood folks have spoken that, but one, Bette Midler, said, get ready, gays, you're next. And what she was meaning, the Supreme Court, on her view, is going to soon take away the right of a gay marriage. Well, that's just one after the other. People citing their displeasure in it, and there are those, many that have sided the other way, glad of what's happening, as far as taking it out of the constitutional range. And something been going on for almost 50 years, the abortion part. But again, we see people who make the claim there to be Christian. I guess all these that spoke would. I know Biden would, and Pelosi and Mr. Obama. They all make the claim, but yet how can you have that claim and yet say that the Bible supports abortion? I don't know. Here's some facts on abortion, historical facts. It was January 22nd, 1993 that the decision Roe versus Wade went into effect. In the past 50 years, some 60 million abortions have taken place, 1.3 million abortions annually. 18% of babies conceived in the U.S. have been aborted. And in the U.S., a baby is aborted every 24 seconds. And then in some metropolitans, the big cities, of the U.S., abortions outnumber live births. So there's a lot going on, has been for the past 50 years, and that's a lot of deaths. A lot of abortions have taken. That's just in America. This has happened. Here's some more facts. January 22nd, 2019, in the state of New York, laws were passed stating a mother could abort her child at any time during a pregnancy. The child could be killed even after birth if the child survived the abortion. So that's a law that was passed there. And when the law was passed, you can go to the YouTube and find this. The New York Senate, whoever the government is in New York Senate, they all stood and they applauded and they cheered that this law was passed. So a woman could be 9 months, going to deliver tomorrow, and decide, I don't want the baby, and the baby could be aborted. And if the baby survives, still be aborted, killed. If the baby survives the abortion. And then abortion is the leading cause of death in the United States. The leading cause of death there. In politics and abortion, with this latest ruling of the Supreme Court, 13 states have trigger bans making abortion illegal after 30 days upon the passing of the ruling. Alabama is one of those 13 states. After the ruling passed, after 30 days, abortion will be illegal except for certain conditions. 18 states banned the procedure the very day the ruling was released, and 20 states will still provide abortions as before. No change in what they were doing. So there's the stats on the states and how they look at it. Now, some things to think about when it comes to politics and abortion. When we step into the voting booth, we must be Christians first, and our political party comes second. Remember, one day we're going to have to answer to God, and we're not going to be answering to a political party or a government, anything of that means. We're going to be answering to God, and I think how we vote concerning trying to save a life will make a difference. So we need to sort of remember that when it comes to who we vote for. When it comes to the Bible and abortion, we need to know what the Bible says about abortion. And I got to thinking back. I looked back over some old sermon stuff. And probably in the years I've been here, I've only preached on it maybe 3 times over a period of 22 years. And that's not a lot. Not a lot. And I think back before that, when I was sitting in the pew listening to preaching, I can't ever remember a lesson on abortion. I can't remember one. Maybe so. But apparently there hasn't been a whole lot said about it. But we certainly need to know what the Bible does have to say about it. Kathy, you got a thing? My throat's dry. Kathy's got about the groats in her purse. Except today. Thank you. The first verses we're going to look at is in Proverbs chapter 16. Talks about 6 things the Lord hates, 7 things are an abomination. In verse 17, a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood. How could anyone be more innocent than a baby? And yet the Lord looks at this. These are things that make him sick. That's what abomination means. Sick. I want to throw up. Thank you, Kirsty. Hands that shed innocent blood. So, you want to make God mad? I mean, fierce fiercely mad, shed innocent blood. And there's nothing any more innocent than a child. When does life begin? That's a big argument among those who are for or against abortion. There are some who will tell us that life begins at the first breath. First breath. Well, Psalms 139 shows us that David speaks of himself before he was born, when he was in the womb. He says, "For you formed me in my inward parts. You covered me with my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, yet being unformed. And in your book they all were written, the days fashioned to me, yet as yet were none of them." So David speaks of the God knowing him while he was being formed in the mother's womb. He was somebody. He was a person. He was a soul whenever that was taking place. So Psalms 139 gives us the understanding. In the womb, there's life. In Luke 1 and verse 41, speaking of John the Baptist when he was a baby, I say a baby, he was still in the womb. And it happened when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary that the babe leaped in her womb. And Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. This is when Mary told Elizabeth that she was with child, and that caused John to leap in the womb, to move, to jump. He was a child, even when in the womb. Some will want to say that, again, it's at the breath, when the baby takes the first breath. That's when they're living, for those who are for abortion. Therefore, the baby's got to be outside the womb for that to happen. But that baby's breathing inside the womb through the mother. There's no doubt about that. The baby is doing that, breathing, sustaining life through her. And some will say, in regards to that, it was God who breathed life into Adam. They would say, well, Adam wasn't anybody until God breathed life into him. Well, how Adam was created and how babies are created are quite different. Adam was created fully grown, and God had to breathe into his nostrils to give him life, to start the life process going. So totally different aspects there, differences between Adam being created versus a baby being created. Totally different. So that doesn't work. You can't use that argument that Adam was given life through breath, and therefore a baby isn't allowed to breathe on its own. The golden rule in Matthew 7 and 12 goes against abortion. Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Do unto others as you have them do unto you. What mother would want to be dismembered? It doesn't bother her to dismember the child. Would it bother her if somebody came and dismembered her? What doctor would want some corrosive fluid to be thrown on his body and dissolve his flesh? What doctor would want that? Well, sure, go ahead and cover me with that, whatever kind of acid it is that destroys, eats the body up. He wouldn't want that. And what judge would want to be taken out of his courtroom and ripped apart by some machine? Wouldn't want that. And yet we don't have a problem doing that to the unborn. Don't have a problem, many don't, to the unborn. There's something wrong. I say something wrong. There's something about it when mothers are told that it's not a child. And they can begin to believe that if they're told that enough, and that's what happens. You go to the Planned Parenthood places, and over years you hear it from those who are for the abortions, and it sort of their mind gets thinking, well, it's not a child. And how could a mother do that to a child, we think? Well, look what Romans 1:31 says. I got two King James and New King James. It calls undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, the word unloving. But look at the King James Version. Without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection. That's the affection that a mother has for her child. Natural affection. And here during the time that Paul was writing this, there were some, even then, that didn't have the natural affection that a mother would have, even for a child. What do we think about the women, the mothers, that take the life of their children after they're up 3 or 4 years old or younger? What do we think about that? You know, there's all times you have a mother that she drowned her 3 or how many children she had in the bathtub. What do you think about that? That's not natural affection. Or the mother that keeps her children in the back seat of the car, in a car seat, and runs it off into a lake and they drown. That's not natural affection. Or the mother that will kill her child and throw it out in the woods, the child. That's not natural. That's what Paul's talking about here. When we lose that natural affection that we have for others, especially for children, there's something's gone wrong somewhere. We have been convinced that something is not right. Here's some statistics. 95% of abortions done as a means of birth control. 3% of abortions done for the health of the mother. 1% of abortions done due to deformity of the fetus. And 1% of abortions done due to rape or incest. And probably the 95% is higher. It's more probably like 97%. Because to save the life of the mother, that's pretty much around 1%. It's not as often we might think it would be, or not what we're hearing. But that's probably 1% or less. Deformity the same way. Abortions due to rape or incest. In Arizona, this is just one state that I found some statistics on. Abortions, 99.92% were done out of convenience. Just didn't want the baby. 99.92. So certain places it's higher. I believe the 95% there is even higher. Should be a higher number than that. They don't want their careers interrupted. It's the financial burden of raising a child, or don't want any more children. And it's big money in this. Big money for doctors who perform it, for these clinics who provide the service. Big money. So therefore, some of these doctors, what they have has been earned on the lives of babies. What they have in their life due to taking the life of a baby. So there's some stats on this. One that they've been bringing up this week was that 10-year-old that was raped and carried either from Illinois to Ohio or from Ohio to Illinois. I can't remember which way it went. And they were showing whether she couldn't get an abortion there, so they had to carry her out of state. That's all you really hear from one side, who want abortion legal. But what you don't know, what they're not saying about that, the man that raped her was the mother's boyfriend that raped her. Yeah, he was illegal, alien. She could have got the abortion in state because the rules were there for it, but she didn't want her boyfriend to be deported, and so she thinks, I'll carry it out of state and nobody ever know any difference. I saved my boyfriend from going to jail and take care of my daughter and such as that, but all that's come out. So there's a lot of stuff that's being said. You got to give it time for stuff to play out and use our common sense. Most doctors, when it comes to trying to save the mother's life, that's what they're focusing on, saving her life, not killing the baby. It may be that in saving her life, the baby may die. But it's not that they're going to just abort the baby to save her life. They're trying to save her life. And if the baby passes, then that's just something that happens, trying to save the life of the mother. So what do we do now? Well, 1 Thessalonians 5, rejoice always, pray without ceasing. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. I think we need to take the opportunity to thank God at least this much has been changed. You know, there's some states that are going to allow it for any and every reason, but this may save the life of a lot of children because of what's been passed, the law, what the Supreme Court did. Proverbs 14:34. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Our primary concern should be righteousness, doing what is right. That's our concern. Not pleasing everybody else, but pleasing God, what is right. In Exodus 18, verse 21, when God gave Moses instructions on choosing judges, they got too much for Moses, you remember, and he couldn't handle everything, and God said, here, let me give you some help. Here's the instructions that God gave on who to choose. In verse 21, moreover, you should select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands. So there are some qualifications God gave Moses. They got to be able to do it. They had to fear God. They were men of truth. They wanted truth. And they were not covetous individuals. And if that is the case, if he would choose them, in verse 23, if you do this thing, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. It will bring about peace in Israel if they would follow God here. Choose the leaders with these qualifications, and they would have a very peaceful place to live. Imagine today if all our leaders followed the way of God in the Bible, what a peaceful place it would be. It'd be people flocking here everywhere wanting to be a part of this nation, to get away from the turmoil maybe they're in at that time where they're at now. In Leviticus 20, when they were offering their children to Molech, the pagans were, and even some of the children of Israel were, here's what God says about that. Again, you shall say to the children of Israel, whoever of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwell in Israel, who gives any of his descendants to Molech, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I will set my face against that man and will cut him off from the people, because he has given some of the descendants to Molech to defile my sanctuary and profane my holy name. Now, Molech was the god that they would offer their children to, live children, mainly little babies who couldn't really resist. And God said, don't do that. Don't do that. And in verse 4 and 5 of Leviticus 20, and if the people of the land should in any way hide their eyes from the man, when he gives some of the descendants to Molech, and they do not kill him, then I will set my face against that man and against his family. I will cut him off from his people and all who prostitute themselves with him to commit adultery with Molech. So if you knew it was going on, if you knew somebody were your neighbor there offered his child to this Molech god, and you didn't do something about it, you were to be stoned. You were to be killed. This was something God would not accept. Child sacrifice. He never required that. Never. So here's some things. What do we do now as a nation? Well, alternatives to abortion, there are many of them out there. And some of the women don't know this. You would think, why wouldn't they know it? Well, they don't know that there's adoption. They don't know that you can put your child in foster care. They don't know that. But because of I don't know what the reason behind the Planned Parenthood and all that is, but again, one thing is money, but there may be other thoughts behind why they're doing this, but they're not telling about the adoption or foster care. And the evil's not going to quit. Again, on and on it goes. Just in last week, we're going to pass new laws. We're going to do new things. We're going to overturn the Supreme Court, and here they go. It's not going to stop. Evil will never quit. We may win the battle, but the war is far from over. It's doing what is right. Some arguments for abortion. There's a few of them here. We've already talked about them somewhat. Life begins at breathing. Abortion saves the mother's life. Incest and rape. On the incest and rape, why punish the baby? Why do that? Why not, if you don't want the child, put the child up for adoption? Do that. Would you take the child's life if the child was 5 years old? If the child was a product of incest or rape, have the baby? Well, let's wait till 5 years and then we'll kill the child. You wouldn't do that. Why would you do it then? Deformity. Sometimes there are things that happen in the womb where the child cannot survive outside the womb. There's times when the baby's brain is born outside the skull, or some other organs are outside, and the child cannot survive. There are things that are tough decisions to make on that. And stopping unwanted pregnancy. God said abstinence. That's how it stopped. You just don't do it. That's how it stopped. Going back to the deformity part there, you don't want to get in a society where you got to match or fit a certain person's perspective before you're fit to live. And you never know what's going to come next. Cancer. You get cancer, you're not fit to live. Or you get diabetes, you're not fit to live. Or Alzheimer's, or some other debilitating disease, or if you get in an accident You're not fit to live. It's a very slippery slope when it comes to deformity. Not the terrible deformity thing, but something. Let's say a child is born with Down syndrome. The loving children, they are there, but many don't want the child. And again, we're setting a standard here. You got to meet this criteria before you're born. You don't want to do that because there's no stopping. And of course, last here, when abortion has happened, they happen. There are Christians where it's happened to. They made the choice to abort the baby, and well, again, got to repent of that, and got to let it go. It can be difficult to let go, but yet I've known a few Christians, women, who it happened to, and it bothered them for many, many years, basically all their life. No, one lady it did. All her life, she couldn't get over it, what she did. But anyway, but you got to talk about forgiveness of this. It can be forgiven. And you got to forgive yourself when it happens, when you let it happen, and try to help others in the same situation. Not to do it. So, everything going on in the news about it, I thought it'd be good to talk about it somewhat. Any comment on it for about time for the bell? The only part concerning saving the mother's life will be in Matthew 19. What God has joined together, let no man separate. If the child is, because of whatever reason, is costing the mother's life, there would be the reason that even the little child is not to separate the marriage. Right there, cause of separation or taking the life from the husband. That's where some of the reasoning goes on that. That not man separating that little child is not to separate him in death or even in divorce. Mm-hmm. Okay. This month. Okay. Reason and Revelation. That's put out by somebody in Nashville. Is Apology Express put it out? Okay. All right. I know the writers, a lot of them are from Nashville. Yeah. Articles. Reason and Revelation. Good articles. Okay. Time for the bell. Thank you for your attention.